Hello, everybody. John Sfiocla here for GAI Insights, bringing you the GenAI news briefing, rating your top news, essential, important, or optional, giving you time in your day and insight in your mind. All right. We have Luda, we have David, we have Ankaj, and we have some interesting stuff. Unbelievable new funding round at $170 plus billion valuation for OpenAI. We've got interesting new capabilities for Panasonic and robotics and much, much more. All right. Ankash, if you could start us off with the first article, please.
Yes, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from Financial Times, and it talks about how Manulife is leading the charge on GenAI innovations.
Yeah, fascinating. A great leader over there. A friend of mine is very close to him. They're doing amazing stuff across the world. And note a lot of this is in Singapore and Asia, where they have a big presence. So I believe, David, you are on.
Yeah, so Manulife is a company that is based in Canada. For folks that don't know, and their U.S. arm is actually John Hancock, which is probably a name people are more familiar with. And this is basically a press release explaining how they're using GenAI today, and they're using it in some, I'd say, pretty basic ways at this point, which is for sales enablement, basically to give engagement ideas to the sales team. They're using it in underwriting, which I thought might be interesting, but it says it's more about analysis and summarization of documents. And that's the use case those are the use cases in Singapore that you were talking about, the underwriting and the sales enablement. And then they're using it in their customer contact centers, which is, of course, becoming kind of table stakes for these types of companies. So I'm going optional on this one. It's kind of basic usage and definitely not worth reading this press release.
Yeah, fascinating. We've got, I completely agree with optional, but it's amazing how just 15 months ago or something, this would have been breakthrough, right?
Yeah,
And
might have been a point.
No, I have to kind of laugh. There's some naysayers that gave me some grief about predictions about how applied this stuff will be. And here we have yet another massive global company putting into operations. It's less than 24 months after, this hit the scene. Luda, what do you think?
Yeah, it's optional, all right. But even we were talking about up pocket and lower pocket when you keep those use cases to demonstrate that other people are using it. This is not even the back pocket article, right? It's just like everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the whole pocket thing. I always loved that because I went to prep school and I had a zillion pockets because we had to wear coats and ties. Yeah. Anyway, yes. All right. So not even in the pocket, hanging off your belt, optional. Next.
The next one comes from Vinod Khosla, where he talks about how AI will deliver broad deflation.
Yeah, here we have Vinod Khosla. I mean, a guy who, actually started with Sun Microsystems, just obviously a giant in Silicon Valley. What do you think here, David?
I don't think that this was my article.
Oh, it's mine. Oh, sorry.
This was you. I mean, I can.
Okay. No, I'm good to go. So Vinod, yeah, I mean, I thought that this for me, this is on the border of optional to important, just because he has, for two reasons. One, he is a wise man and has said, I think, some very interesting things over the years. In addition to making a gobsmack amount of money in terms of investing, and I think this whole notion of deflation happening because of generative AI and AI. And the thing that came to mind for me, and this will date me, is Star Trek and the Replicator. Where the crew just walks up and gets whatever they want from it. And that will cause deflation. And his notion that we're going to have to think about broader social services and so forth. I would agree with that. I think that the challenge is that he ducked all the important stuff about, okay, if we're going to spread the wealth, how are we going to do that, right? How are we going to get capital or capability in the hands of individuals? So to me, this reminded me of a dear friend of mine who once said, I'm socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And I said to him, so that means you'll give people your sympathy, but not your money. and and it feels a little bit like that.
I have a few friends like
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I guess I've talked myself into optional. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking important, John, because this is an interesting futuristic perspective, but it comes from a person who looks at the technology in a slightly different way. He is looking for breakthroughs that could change the world, who might be 10% successful, you know. So it's a very different perspective, and what he's saying is correct, except for it might not happen due to regulations and the like. But he sees that there is an opportunity to do so. So I think it's important for people to read and think.
Okay, I can go with that.
David, what do
David,
you
you're the tiebreaker here.
Oh man, I mean, I like him. I read whatever he has to say personally. I mean, he's been super successful, and has basically picked a lot of winners. I mean, I'm sure he's picked a lot of losers too, and we hear about the winners, but he has been good at picking the winners.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could support important just to get the leader's head out of their day to day and kind of think bigger picture and who else to read. But something from Vinod, so I can support.
Well, look, I mean, you're a very informed observer of this, you know, and you read a lot, and the fact that you would read it, I think, makes it to me at least important, you know, and it's interesting toward the end there, he talks about having the ability to take lots of bets. And when we did our book on self-made billionaires, that was one of the critical things. It's not that they win every time; it's that they can play the game again. And fascinating, just as you said. All right, important it is, Ankaj. We're rolling through here. What's up? We got lots to cover.
Okay, the next one comes from Panasonic and it talks about how they have developed a diffusion contact model.
Yeah, what'd you think of it? Well, I found it. Well, first off, that was really kind of cool. I mean, the
think?
notion of the using Bayesian inference, but then using a neural network on the feedback as opposed to simply Bayesian update, which is kind of cool, you know. And robots, man, what do you think here, Luda?
I'm all for robotics. I do think that in 10, 15 years, we'll see robots everywhere.
Yeah.
This is a barrier, right? To train them still requires a physical setup or zillions of examples of opening a little door, right? So and doing it in the correct manner. This is it's somewhat of a breakthrough. Ankash, go up a little bit and zoom in on that graphic at the top. So what they've come up with is instead of uh, training the model or evaluating the results of the model in the physical environment. So you predict with like the regular what the force would be needed to do an action, and then you put the robot in the physical environment. This is a wiping task, and then you wipe many times, go back and forth until the force is correct. So here they've trained a diffusion model to do the same, to do the evaluator. And as a result, they took that training task from 80 minutes to 25 minutes, which is quite significant. So I mean, I know for most people it probably is optional, but for the robotics field, it's a breakthrough, however research
Yeah.
it is. So I said, let's put an eye on it, and important. And this is a short summary. The deep article is behind it. So a
Yeah.
short summary wouldn't hurt anybody. So I thought eye is on it, important.
Yeah, I support important. The other one is I think there's two additional interesting dimensions to this thing, among many. And two more I'll point out. One is that they announced this at Abu Dhabi. So I think it's really interesting to watch how the Gulf states, with all their wealth, are going to move into AI and robotics. Whether it's a facilitation thing or access to technology, we've seen data centers open up there. Advanced models. It's going to be. So I think they're going to play a really interesting place because it's such a capital intensive game. The other thing is that it seems like China may be a big competitor in terms of different robotic models, but especially, the large language models. The Japanese research papers seem to be focused a lot on the physical world. And, so I think that's going to be a really interesting, and obviously they've deployed a tremendous amount of robots in Japanese culture, like the robot dogs and so forth, for companionship. And due to the demographics of Japan and other places, I think these robots are, when you look at the population pyramid of Japan or the population pyramid of China, they're going to need robots, right?
Correct. So it's very non-surprising that it's coming from Panasonic.
Yeah.
They are targeting, effectively putting those little helpers all
Yes.
over the place, right? And as a result, training these helpers
Mhm.
is a bottleneck, and they're addressing it. That's why I think it's worth putting it as important.
Yeah, I mean, they have a massive, for example, Alzheimer's problem, just like we do in the United States. And the bad news of their good eating habits is that they live a long time, even if their brains don't work. So it's the labor shortages for things like elder care are, as acute on a proportional basis as they are here, or
Yep.
more. David, what'd you think? We're making the case for important here.
Well, I mean, I'm outnumbered, right? So
Yes, that's the problem with democracy. And that's why I felt like telling Elon Musk, hey, democracy, your point of view loses. That's how it works.
You almost have me convinced. I had it as optional. I mean, it's definitely a nice breakthrough, but it's certainly not something that, as Luda said, is going to affect anyone's day to day. And we've read about a lot of new techniques that are kind of speeding up the training of robots. So this is another one, which is great, but I didn't necessarily think this was important. But it's 2-1.
It's actually Vivek votes with importance, so it's now 3-1.
I see. Now I'm really I'm screwed.
You're not screwed. It's democracy. All right, here we go. Next. Important it is.
Okay, the next one comes from Character.ai, and Character.ai is now abandoning making AI models after their $2.7 billion Google deal.
David, what do you think here? They're bowing out of the big models.
Yeah, honestly, I thought we already knew that. I thought that they had said this when this deal was announced a month or two ago, whenever that happened, which, just as a reminder, Google snapped up a couple of key players there who were formerly at Google before they started this venture, because they were upset that Google wouldn't release their chatbot that they had built. They took 20% of the staff along with these key players, which were the founders, actually, and kind of left this behind. And what they've left behind is it's an app, right? I mean, it's a really successful one. It's got like millions and millions of users. It basically has characters that you can interact with that behave in certain ways. They'll emulate a therapist, or things that are a little bit more fun to play with. But Meta's already starting to do this now. I'm sure it's not long before Google does it on their own, and there's a reason that they didn't snap up the whole thing. So all this to say, this is optional. I can't see this company really lasting for the long haul unless they get into something else in addition to what they have. But optional, just kind of part of the soap opera of the pieces that are moving around here, and sort of the consolidation of the big tech players of their power.
All right. So we're going for optional. I vote optional. Luda, optional?
Optional. It would be interesting to know what happens with this app, right? But I think it will merge with a bigger structure where, like, this is a piece of another app or several apps.
Yeah. Not to worry here. These people will be reemployable. They'll probably walk with a lot of. They'll walk with a lot of dough. I'm not gonna sweat it over Character.ai.
I'm thinking investors here.
Yeah, well, actually, the cool thing that I didn't mention, so speaking of walking away with a lot of dough, is the money that they got from Google. So it's already been dispersed amongst employees. Not all of it. Some of it, they got special payments. they did some really cool, unheard of things to support the employees. So kudos on that.
That's true.
Luda, feeling sympathy for Silicon Valley investors. My goodness.
Oh, well, I'm one of them.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. I'm not in Silicon Valley though. Okay.
Anyway, all right. They're all qualified investors, as they say. All right. Next. Optional on this one. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from Accenture. So Accenture has formed a specialized group focused on NVIDIA.
Yeah. So separate group, fully owned by Accenture. Remember, Accenture is a publicly traded company. They're going to train 30,000 people in this stuff. I know Accenture's got, I think 300,000 people, so 10% of their workforce. But I think this is a huge deal for services, and I was going to give it an important. And I actually already sent this to the 4 friends of mine over at PwC who run the AI part. If you pull apart Accenture, one of the really interesting things, and what a juggernaut it's been in services, where I spent a lot of my career, is that when they went public, I thought they'd have a hard time growing. But what they've done is that if you look at the compensation of the very top executives there, and there's a thing that every public company, I was on a couple of public company boards, and what you have to file is a thing called Def 14A, and in there is the compensation structure of the senior executives and the members of the board of directors. And what's in there is not only do they have, what are the goals and objectives that they need to hit to win their bonuses, and in there is a return on assets measure and a long-term economic value creation, which would tend to make them be willing to invest in assets that have a multi-year payout and can be depreciated over time. The reason this is important is that traditional partnerships don't have that kind of a structure. So this is why law firms are going to have a hard time, and professional services firms that don't have a capital budget, most of them don't have a capital budget. As far as I know, none of the big 4 have capital budgets, for example. So every time they put money down on a multi-year investment, they're taking it out of this year's bonus. So that's a hard thing. And so same with law firms. So I think it's fascinating. I think Accenture can really make a dent here because they can create a separate entity. They're not conflicted, as the big 4 are often conflicted, and they can put tons of capital behind it. And the senior executives are going to make dough during, a 4 or 5 year window on those investments. So I put this as important because I think it is a leading indicator, a bell cow for how services are going to be transformed.
Another noteworthy mention is that they're focusing on agentic systems.
Yeah.
So they're putting together the stack that would allow easy integration into the processes and focus on agents, training agents. It's, as we know, people are very skeptical. They want to deploy agents, but
Sure.
they are still concerned that agents will go amok somewhere, not where they're supposed to be. So that needs to be, but this visionary step, I think, is very important because they will demonstrate with some pioneers that it's not dangerous, it can be done, and as a result, it will just be spread, and that's important. I agree.
Yeah, on the agent thing, I would just say I watched Andrew Ng's presentation of Sequoia Capital on YouTube, and the way they're defining agents, Luda, is just robotic process automation with some autonomy. It's not wide. It's not widespread. Hey, your agent goes out into a marketplace and does things for you. This is about either chain of thought reasoning or things like that, getting to an answer or interacting with other applications in a relatively controlled environment. To me, it's more like object-oriented programming is the way they're really doing it.
It's very controlled. It's very controlled.
Yeah.
The controls can be loosened over time, right? But at the moment, it's very controlled, and that's good.
Yeah. I agree with Kevin here. Obviously, a very informed observer here that, this underscores NVIDIA's rise in the software stack. Yeah, Kevin, I'm not old enough, but, we're almost kind of going to pre-IBM 360 integration of software and hardware when you look at the stack, because before they had that universal operating system, GE was actually first before IBM. That's another whole story. But before they had that uniform software stack and interchangeability, and kind of the horizontality of the market. IBM, which had over 80% of all the market capitalization in the industry, had vertically integrated hardware and software in devices, right? Whether accounting machines or controllers or whatever. I think we're kind of going back there.
Yeah, but very much so. And we've been, Kevin, you're absolutely right. We've been hitting on that NVIDIA is creating a stack. Remember, they introduced a router to actually look at different models and implement them in real time. So, and obviously, this announcement allows them to go way higher up into software in different applications. So this is cool.
Okay.
It will spread.
I need to weigh in on this one, even though I'm outnumbered. Okay.
Again, David, democracy. It's not about being outnumbered. It's about
go, David. Go.
Making a case for your point of view.
I'm going to voice the minority point of view here, and this is coming from someone who also spent a lot of time in financial services in a larger company. Okay, so many things I have to say about this. First of all, I was like triple optional on this article. I get all your points. However, number one, I can't send anybody to read this article. The jargon, oh my God, it's just jargon on jargon on jargon. Shame on VentureBeat for just picking up a press release, which is all they clearly did here. And I was eating while I was doing this, and it was making me nauseous. So I can't make anybody read this article. I wish we could find something that's a little better than this one if we want to have people read this point, if I'm going to lose the battle here. But the other thing is, look, this is what consultancies do, right? They partner with tech companies and they go in there and they implement it, right? They've been doing this for years. Like the contracts with Microsoft, SAP, blah, blah, blah. Like it's the same thing. There's no investment. They wouldn't talk about any investment here from NVIDIA, or they wouldn't even say how much Accenture is spending on it. They wouldn't say how much they're hiring people. This to me sounds like one of those announcements where they're just trying to be loud. PwC talked about their partnership with ChatGPT with OpenAI a month or two ago, and how that's extended. I get what you're saying about the bigger picture and services, and we know NVIDIA is getting into the hardware stack and blah, blah, blah. But to me, this is like run-of-the-mill, like chest beating stuff coming out of a consultancy.
I hear you, David, and in some sense it is, and you're right. However, the NVIDIA is a force, and they've created this hardware with quite interesting software, and with the recent acquisitions, they are a major player. What this does, and other consultancies will also do the same thing, this spreads it to the enterprise, and these guys know how to do the enterprise, right? How to serve the enterprises. So that's what it's a multiplying factor. You are right, but I thought it's a multiplying factor worth noting in the important. But yeah, I'm okay with the optional, but John will probably vote for essential then.
No. I think that I hear you, David, and people do that all the time. And I agree the language is terrible, and consultants and whatever technology companies abuse the language. I agree with that. And but I think that here we've got a market leading company. You go back to Vinod's stuff. You've got an organization that can really globally lay down an enormous amount of capital, and of the services providers at the top of the stack in terms of being able to make this more capital intensive. And unlike SAP and things like that, this is the first technology that is Janus-like, that's two-faced. It's going to make Accenture more capital intensive, and it's going to make the client more capital intensive. And that's not true of Workday, SAP, and all the other things that they've implemented in the past. So that's where I think it to me makes it is, yes, they do things like this, but this is different, not just in degree, but in kind, in my opinion, because of that.
Like Kevin's comment about me sticking up for the English language.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not the only reason, Kevin. I mean, it's part of why I hated this article, but yeah, I thought it was kind of run of the mill. But John and Luda make good arguments.
All right, we're going for important here. All right, okay. Next.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from AI coding startup Poolside, which has raised $500 million from eBay, Nvidia, and others.
All right, let's see. Ludo, what'd you think of this one?
I put an optional on it. It's an investment announcement, granted good names invested in it, including NVIDIA, but coding is hot and there are massive startups. I actually tried to figure out what's different about this one. Why is it like what differentiation there is? I couldn't find. So optional for me.
Yeah, that was the exact same reaction I had. I was like, I was surprised. I can't believe that 500 million is getting pumped into this company that's replicating how many other companies and GitHub and larger ones that. I saw no differentiation on this one.
I gave it optional. I was thinking about maybe important, but and I agree with you. I can't see the differentiation here. I wonder, the fact that Bain Capital's in there, this money, I would be willing to bet 400 million in funding. If Bain Capital simply applied this technology in their Bain Capital portfolio companies, I bet that the collective technology spend is in the billions in terms of software, in terms of the companies that Bain Capital controls. So 400 million bucks to go grab 400 million bucks worth of economic value in the underlying company, and all of that is multiplied by the exit. So if they save 100 million in software, that goes into EBITDA. Then that gets some multiple. Let's call it 10 on sale. So even if they save 100 million bucks worth of software cost in their portfolio companies, that's worth $1 billion to them. You know what I mean? So I think it's really easy money if they can just, if you just thought of this as kind of a capability across the portfolio. And I don't know how much dough Bain Capital's got deployed, but it's got to be 50 billion or more, which means they're controlling half a trillion or 250.
John, that's how corporate VCs. That's kind of the underlying structure.
Yeah. So, but that was a guess. I agree. I couldn't see what the differentiation is, but to me, if Bain Capital can jam it into the portfolio companies, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but optional for me.
Optional.
David,
everybody's doing it. Okay, next.
Okay, the last one comes from OpenAI, and they have raised $6.6 billion, and they are now valued at $157 billion.
I tell you, when I was a kid, General Hospital was a big soap opera, and it was like Luke and Laura and stuff. Like this is the soap opera of the most valuable startup in history. So, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go optional on this. So it's this, that's kind of the headline says it all here. I mean, there is some detail here on who invested, which there was Microsoft, you had NVIDIA, SoftBank. This is like their first investment here. Yeah. Khosla, who we talked about earlier, Altimeter Capital, Fidelity was an interesting one, and MGX, again, talk about Abu Dhabi. We see them showing up here as well. So, I mean, look, this, eye-watering, right? $157 billion valuation is amazing. 6.6 going in. That's about the same that was raised by XAI earlier this year. We know why they need it, right? We've seen their losses this year were $5 billion, and a lot of it's just because of the compute that they're cranking through. And I think it says they spend $1 billion a year on their staff, right? So, kudos to them. This will keep them going. I know that their revenue is decent, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get by without continuing to raise potentially on an annual basis, at least for a while. So keeps them breathing. I don't think you need to read the article necessarily, so go optional.
Yeah,
I was also optional because kudos to Sam, but I think for pulling it off, I think this was critically important and at that valuation. So kudos to him. But it's such companies, such a turmoil, as this article points out. Out of all the people, I think 13 that funded the company or were the first ones, 3 are left. It's not good.
Yeah.
Not good. So he needs this money. He needs to really stabilize the company, and he's going the turn to a for profit. So it's a difficult time for the company, and I hope he can do it.
Yeah, actually, that's a good note that I forgot to mention, which is that the investors can actually ask for their money back if that conversion to a for-profit or a benefit corporation is the structure that they're going for. If it doesn't happen, they can come back for the money, which is interesting. That it'll take at least those 2 years to try to get that done, right?
Yeah, Akash, I think you've got an interesting perspective on this as well.
Yeah, so there are rumors going on Twitter or X.com that Sam Altman is asking investors not to invest in XAI, SSI, and a few other firms now.
Yeah. For me, I mean, not that anybody's asking me, and not that I have $1 billion to put into this thing, but I would not invest at this value. Putting down $6.6 billion to get a little over 4% of the company. I mean, give me a break. And in addition, XAI was in the 20s, right? 27 or something like that. And the other thing is XAI's strategy, they could screw it up, but I understand. I mean, they're coming in as a low-cost inference provider. They built the world's largest supercomputer already. You know what I mean? I could see, because I think inference is going to be a war. Now this guy hoping he can go from 20 to $44 a month and raise price on as a standalone without channel. I don't get. I mean, I'm sure he's got a beautiful vision, but I think OpenAI is going to be the company that gets really. They're like Tesla, I think. Which is tremendously overpriced. It's a great car company, terribly overpriced as a stock, I thought.
The crazy thing is, I wondered if this is enough money, right? I mean, with the O1 model that is taking up an enormous amount of compute on the inference side, this might not be enough, right? To keep their more cutting-edge products going and beyond preview.
No, David, you're right. This wouldn't last them a while, and I think that's the problem. And as I said, he has major issues on leadership and turning the company into the for-profit. That's two different things that he needs to do on this money, in addition to crank out new products. It's a difficult time. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah,
we'll see. I wish I could short the stock, but it's not public, so you can't do. Anyway, hey, good problems to have. These guys that Josh Kushner and the crew, over at what's the name of the capital? Anyway, their company, obviously got plenty of money to put on here, and we'll see. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. All right. Here we have Manulife, optional, venture, pioneer, important, optional on Character.ai, Accenture, important, although with a strong dissenting opinion from Justice DeLello. All right. arguing not only sameness, but a detriment to the English language. All right, there we are. We have I hope that this is useful. I just wanted to remind everybody we've got our upcoming event, which is sold out. You can put your name on the waiting list if you have time. It's going to be Monday, Tuesday next week in Boston. We've got fantastic speakers. Really hope to, pepper the world with development, understanding, and help people inskilled in a kind of executive education way, not just a traditional conference. So hope you have a great week and see you all tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.